Google's a little slow today. All right, now that we're recording, I'm going to take the roll. So I'm going to leave this screen. And when you hear your name, please respond verbally. Leanne Adams.
Here.
Ajane Baker. Ajane Baker. Let me see if she's responding in the chat. Devin Como.
Here.
Jamar Hill. Jamar Hill. Jeremiah Hogan.
Right.
Tyshandra Jarrow.
Here.
Devontae Johnson.
I'm here.
Brianna Lee. Brianna Lee. Taylor Morris.
Here.
Asia Rachel.
Here.
Julia Tippin. Julia Tippin. Jaden Walsh.
Here.
Darlinda Wright.
Here.
Okay, so I'm going to do a last call for Ajane Baker. Ajane Baker. Jamar Hill. Brianna Lee. Julia Tippin. Okay, folks. We got that behind us. So today is going to be our last lecture dealing with dynastic, dealing with the architecture of ancient Egypt. On Friday, I'm going to have a video posted for you all to view. We will not meet, but there will be questions based on the video. It will be dealing with the Nok people of Africa and their miraculous ceramic sculptures. The Nok people are from Nigeria. So today we're going to view a video that covers monumental Egypt. And that video is already posted in your course resources. So I'm going to put up my share screen. Okay. You all can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to put on a student view so you will know exactly where to find this video. So I don't have the questions ready for this video. We have I think I have 15 questions from this video. They're 2 points apiece, so this will be a 30-point assignment. I have not published it yet, but we're going to look at the video together, and then you will know, the questions will be posted in 24 hours when this video is posted. So I'm going to click the course resources link. And so we have our lecture on Egyptian architecture listed right here. Underneath, we have the video that we're about to view called Egyptian Monuments. So it's already published. So I'm going to click it and watch the video.
This is Kyle. He invented one wheel to destroy boredom. Turns out
Homes are decorated with offerings.
Okay, here we go. Can everybody hear the video okay?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Giza, today a peripheral borough of Cairo, 12 kilometers southwest of the city center, stands on the left bank of the River Nile, on the border with the Western Desert. In the past, it was one of the Memphis necropolises. This is where the pyramids were built for the burial of 4th dynasty pharaohs, Cheops, Khephren, and Menkaure. The pyramids have a square base. They are extraordinarily large and were covered in such a way that their surface was perfectly flat. The Cheops Pyramid, also known as the Great Pyramid, is the northernmost of the 3 built in Giza, as well as being the tallest and most impressive of the ones built in ancient Egypt. Its total surface area covers more than 4 hectares. The ancient entrance is on the northern side, at a height of about 15 meters. But the modern visitor enters through a passage opened by the Caliph Mamun in the 9th century AD, slightly lower than the original entrance. A narrow corridor leads, first descending, then rising to the Great Gallery, and then to the King's Chamber, covered with granite slabs. The sarcophagus where the mummy of Cheops was laid is also made of granite. One should not be surprised by the extraordinary size of the tomb. The king was considered a god for all intents and purposes. The pyramids were the apparent display of the quality difference between normal human beings and the pharaoh, a god on earth, custodian of the country's unity, order, and prosperity. The Khephren pyramid is lower than the nearby one of Cheops. However, it looks taller because it was built on a slightly raised location. On top of the monument, there is still most of the original smooth external covering made of Tura limestone. Apart from these tombs, among the most significant monuments, mention should also be made of the gigantic statue of the Sphinx. It has the body of a crouched lion and a human-shaped head, resembling the traits of Pharaoh Khephren. When General Bonaparte arrived in Egypt, only the head and parts of the shoulders emerged from the sand. Giza is mentioned by the Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt around 450 BC in the second book of his Historie. He writes that the Pyramid of Cheops was built using, among other things, machines made of short wooden sticks, probably a sort of rocker arms, which were used to transfer the block from one level to another. Ancient testimonies, on the other hand, only show the technique based on the construction of ramps. These are inclined planes made of raw bricks and rubble, along which the blocks, loaded onto sledges, were carried. Herodotus himself also writes that the construction of the Cheops pyramid in Giza involved 100,000 men working in turn, each of them for 3 months, and that on top of the pyramids, it is possible to read in Egyptian letters how much was spent for the workers in radishes, onions, and garlic. The pyramids were not built by men kept in slavery, but rather by farmers hired by the pharaoh during the months when they could not work because of the Nile floods, and supported using state money. Ipet Isut, the most selected of places, as Karnak was called in ancient times, was the sacred section of Thebes, capital of Egypt during the New Kingdom and holy city of Ammon. It is the largest archaeological complex in Egypt, mostly surrounded by the walls of Ammon. A short distance away, there are three other rows of walls. The southern one, dedicated to the bride of the god Mut. The eastern one to Khonsu, couple's son. And the northern one to Montu, the original deity of the whole Thebes area. The large Ammon walls are shaped like a four-sided trapezium. They are made of raw bricks about 8 meters thick and include 8 stone doors. To the northwest, the monumental entrance of the first pylon, where the procession boats arrived, is preceded by an avenue flanked by Sphinx statues. In front of the first pylon, there is a basin, fed by a canal with water from the Nile. From a pier, it was possible to see the boats being steered during solemn celebrations. An avenue with ram-shaped sphinxes, protecting an image of Pinugem I, connected the pier to the temple. There was another monumental entrance to the south at the level of the 10th pylon of the temple, oriented towards the walls of Mut. The row of walls also included other monuments, such as the temples dedicated to Opet, other small temples and chapels, and a large sacred lake. The first pylon of the Temple of Ammon was the main entrance. The central door of the pylon led to the courtyard. The large courtyard opening behind the first pylon of the Temple of Karnak was built by the Bubasti kings of the 22nd dynasty from Libya. To the left and right of the visitors, arcades were built. The southern one to the right included a temple of Ramses III. To the left of the temple, there is a large door, the only decorated one on the south side of the courtyard with reliefs and inscriptions of the 22nd dynasty. This is why it was known as Bubastiti Arcade. In the center, the remains of a kiosk built by Taharqa. The second pylon is preceded by a sort of vestibule, at the entrance of which the two colossal Ramesses II statues were placed. After the entrance pylon, the courtyard delimited by large arcades, and the second pylon with chapels and sacred boat warehouses, you enter the extraordinary hippo-style room of the temple.
Okay, so this is what we've mentioned before in the notes, the Hippo-style hall cathedral. These are the gigantic lotus pillars or columns, this being the base, this being the shaft, and the open lotus at the top of each of these pillars.
It is 103 meters wide and 52 meters deep. It is an impressive view with its 134 enormous papyrus-shaped sandstone columns divided into 16 rows.
Okay, notice the open lotus capitals of each of these columns.
The 12 columns in the central nave, more than 23 meters tall, have open chalice capitals. The other 122 columns with a closed chalice capital are about 10 meters smaller.
So 10 meters is almost 40 feet. And for our purposes, we're going to refer to those closed lotus, those closed capitals as lotus buds.
This difference in height made it possible to open between the architrave and the ceiling stone grid windows, one of which is still almost intact. The Temple of Amun at Karnak was the most important religious institution in Egypt, both from an ideological and economic point of view. Its foundation dates back at least to the 12th century, and the pharaohs in charge competed in building increasingly majestic monuments there. A long alley flanked by sphinxes connected the complex to Luxor, the other major cultural center in Egypt.
So you notice these large complexes are surrounded by walls that are roughly 30 to 40 feet tall. These walls are an indication that all may not have been well in ancient Egypt in terms of they wanted to keep the commoners out. You see all these dwellings, these small dwellings for commoners. They were only allowed in a few people at a time. And of course, there were private rituals that were conducted there that they weren't privy to witnessing.
In the southern area, on the banks of the Nile, stands the Temple of Ammon, also including the small Abu el-Hagag Mosque, built in the 13th century AD. The Temple of Luxor was dependent on that of Karnak, to which it was connected by a processional route. It was called Lipet Imen Rezit, the southern harem of Ammon, and during the great feast of Opet, the statue of the god was carried there from Karnak by a solemn procession. The modern-day remains of the ancient building are the work of two great pharaohs of the New Kingdom, Amenophis III and Ramesse II. The Temple of Ammon in Luxor, designed at the time of Amenophis III, featured a traditional plan. It was preceded by a pylon through which visitors entered a large courtyard with a double arcade on three sides, then the hippo-style room. The arcades and hippo-style room are supported by papyrus-shaped fasciculated columns. Ramesses II.
Those columns are once again the closed bud columns. So this is the base, the shaft, and the capital.
Second, the 19th dynasty, added a courtyard in front of the building with a double arcade on its four sides. Colossal granite statues representing the pharaoh were placed in the spaces between the columns of the first row on the south side. In front of the pylon of the temple in Luxor, on the sides of the entrance gate, there are 6 colossal Ramesses II statues, 2 of them seated and 4 standing. The 2 statues immediately to the left and right of the gate are made of gray granite. They show the pharaoh seated and are more than 15 meters tall.
"15 meters is roughly 45 to 50 feet tall."
Memphis, royal residence and capital of Egypt during the Old Kingdom, was supposedly founded by Menes, the first pharaoh in Egyptian history. In an area reclaimed from the marshes on the border between Upper and Lower Egypt, on the plain on the eastern banks of the Nile in front of Saqqara, its great necropolis. The name Saqqara derives from the local tribe of Beni Sokhar, who settled in the area during the Middle Ages. The most significant monument in the necropolis is undoubtedly the step pyramid of Djoser, a pharaoh of the 3rd dynasty. His architect, Imhotep, initially designed a great mastaba, placed at the center of a large row of walls, with projecting sections and recesses covering.
Mastaba is one of the terms you're going to have to be familiar with when we look at the Egyptian architecture assignment that we reviewed on Monday. We covered the mastaba extensively.
A total surface of about 15 hectares. The project was greatly modified, with the mastaba changed to a pyramid with 6 steps, about 60 meters tall.
"60 meters is roughly 180 feet.
On the northern side of the pyramid, there is the entrance to the underground rooms. Through a series of corridors with several rooms on the side, you reach the burial chamber of the pharaoh, 28 meters under the base. This is where some parts of the Djoser mummy were found. To the south, a narrow passage leads to a long courtyard flanked by chapels with a horizontal or arched covering. They reproduced the kiosks made of reeds, then of wood, of the pre-dynasty age and of the first dynasties. The doors are shown open or closed, with the hinges and chains also cast in stone, but they do not lead to any room because the small buildings are full-bodied. The Jubilee complex of the Djoser pyramid, in fact, reproduced the architectural structure made of perishable materials used for the sovereignty regeneration celebration. The latter was a purely magic symbolic occasion, which is why these were fake buildings which could be used only by the soul of the dead pharaoh. Dendera, which in the age of pharaohs was called Unet Tantere, was the capital of Upper Egypt. Its remains are on the western bank of the Nile, at the level of the town of Cana, where the river makes a sharp bend. Here, a row of raw bricks encloses a large sacred area, in the center of which stands the temple of the goddess Hathor, made of sandstone and oriented towards the Nile. The pilgrims reached the river from the wharf and arrived at the sacred.
We see these columns, this row of columns, we would refer to that as a colonnade.
Sacred enclosure from an arcaded avenue, after the purification rites at the fountains next to the entrance.
Notice these columns with the open lotus capitals.
The river in this point flows from east to west. This means that the main entrance is to the north and has a monumental door dating back to the age of the emperors Domitian and Trajan. The courtyard in front of the temple with the columns and pylons of the northern door was never completed. The temple was erected in the 1st century BC under the last of the Ptolemies during the reign of Augustus on the site of another building, probably dating back to the ancient kingdom then expanded in later years.
Okay, so Ptolemy, as they just mentioned, during the Ptolemaic period, Ptolemy was not a native of ancient Egypt. Ptolemy was a Greek, and he was one of the officers of Alexander the Great. This is why the stylization has changed tremendously. This refers to the period of time after Akhenaten fell and his queen Nefertiti was involved with Alexander the Great in keeping the Hyksos hordes from taking over. As a result, Ptolemy, who misinterpreted and misunderstood the secrets and science of ancient Egypt, created a tyrannical reign. And you notice that there's a drastic change in the capitals of the columns in relation to the other works.
The Temple of Hathor consists of a first large hypostyle room, followed by a second space which was used as a vestibule. The large hypostyle room in the Temple of Hathor at Dendera is supported by 24 Hathoric columns. The front row forms the facade. It is surmounted by a molding in the center of which the winged disk of the sun can be seen. The internal and external spaces between the columns are decorated with offering scenes surrounded by inscriptions. The interior of the room is particularly fascinating. In the semi-darkness, the face of Hathor from above the columns attracts the visitor's gaze from any position. Offering scenes framed by texts completely cover the walls and column shafts. The column's capital shows the face of Hathor on the four opposing sides, surmounted by a rectangular representation of the sistrum.
Notice how all the features of Hathor's face have been removed in real time.
Inside the row of walls perpendicular to the large temple stand the Roman Mamesis, built in the age of Augustus, and the Mamesis of Nectanebus I.
So Augustus, they're referring to Caesar Augustus. So this is way past dynastic Egypt. By the time Caesar Augustus grew to power in Rome, Greece had already fallen, and most of ancient Egypt was now open, and so the population changed. It turned very different. And so differing groups of migrants and immigrants into Egypt changed the culture to suit their needs while trying to maintain aspects of it.
First, a pharaoh of the 30th dynasty. On the western side, you have the sacred lake and the sanatorium for all those who slept in the temple area and then asked the priests to interpret their dreams. The island of Philae, from the ancient Egyptian Pilak, literally the Isle of the Temple of Ra, is in the vicinity of the first Nile Dam, about 5 kilometers south of Aswan. This important pilgrimage site was the home of Isis and Horus as a child. The sacred place where Osiris was buried, also known as He Who Rests in Philae, was called the Holy Island. It could be visited only with the permission of the highest-ranking priests, and it was a stronghold and one of the last outposts along the border with Nubia. The most ancient monuments date back to the 25th and 30th dynasty. Psammetichus II, sovereign of the 26th dynasty, built a small kiosk, which was intended as a stopping point for priests' processions to the tomb of god Osiris on the nearby Isle of Biga, which overlooks the kiosk. Most of the monuments date back to the Ptolemaic Roman age.
That's that word, Ptolemaic. Ptolemy is the same, and that Roman age. So the dynastic period, which is considered the greatest period of ancient Egypt, stopped at the 18th dynasty. So from 1 to 18, and the 18th dynasty was ruled by Ramses. So I think Ramses II. So everything after that was a mixture of various Greek and Roman and occasional, well, it's a mixture of different types of leaders and different types of people. And the architecture and the quality of it was not as impressive as it was during the dynastic period when it was all pure Egyptian. So this is part of their decline.
The large temple of Isis, completed by Ptolemy III Euergetes, can be reached from the kiosk of Nectanebus, which leads to a wide space enclosed by 2 arcades of the Roman age, and to the north by the first pylon. From here, you reach a courtyard enclosed by the manises and by columns, and at the back by the second pylon. You then enter the hippo-style room of the Temple of Isis, which features 10
Okay, we're going to stop right there for this class. So you will have 20 questions based on this. They will be 5 points apiece, and that will be published in 24 hours, and that will be due on Friday. We will not meet for Friday, but there will be a video posted in the course resources area on the NOC people. You are to watch that video and answer those questions. Both of those assignments will be posted within 24 hours. We will have our quiz on ancient Egyptian architecture next Friday, the 22nd. So I will post that in the announcements link next week, and we will review for it on Wednesday. So are there any questions?
May you get my name for the attendance, please?
Okay, most
Thank
definitely. Anybody else? Let's see.
Me too, Jamal.
Okay, all right. Let me make sure you all are listed. Give me 1 second. Okay, so Ajane is here and Jamar. Is Brianna Lee here? How about Julia Tippin? Okay. All right, folks. So that's the marching orders. Remember, we will not meet on Friday. I'm going to cancel the Google Meet link that I sent to everybody, and I'm going to send an announcement. So we will not meet Friday, but you are expected to watch the video that we started watching today completely, because the questions will come from the entire video, as well as watch all of the video on the Nok peoples of ancient Nigeria, full to completion. It's like a 40-minute video, and there will be 20 questions from that. And both of those assignments will be worth 100 points. So if there are no further questions, we're going to stop recording the meeting, and I'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.